Hey everybody, it's Stacy Tuttle here with Bridges 527. Wanted to chat about Turning Red from Pixar that came out on the Disney Channel. Pretty cute movie, using this kind of, really it was kind of a remake of the Hulk, but like a cute Asian kind of animal style. So instead of turning into this Hulk, she turns into a beast, but it is a cute fuzzy panda. Sometimes it's a little more intimidating and sometimes it's just cute and lovable. But anytime she experiences intense emotions, and so, which up until that, she had been kind of like this very perfect type A driven, I have to do everything perfect, please my parents, very a lot of pressure on herself to be perfect and to perform at a high level. And then suddenly she kind of hits like 13 and all of a sudden her emotions start coming out and suddenly she kind of is not perfect anymore. She's a panda. So I think the idea was super clever, although it was a little bit of a remake of the Hulk, I would say, in some ways. However, it's any intense emotion. It's not just anger that she's expressing. So in the movie The Hulk was always kind of a negative thing. It was about negative emotions. Hers could be joy. It could be all kinds of stuff. It's just anything that was bubbling out, right? So, but let's talk about a couple things here. I think it is a great launch pad for some discussions. I think it falls short of giving any real answers. So the problem is they don't admit that. So I think it's typical for kids to watch something like this and think, oh, they're giving me you don't even realize it subconsciously. You think they're giving you answers rather than just opening up a discussion. So I think this is a great opportunity for parents, mentors, whoever, to kind of start some conversations with people. And let me give you some of the conversations that I've been having with myself about this movie, actually, because it really did spawn a lot of thoughts in my head. If we just kind of look historically, the pendulum, we tend to be often not in, it's hard to find a target to go towards. It's very easy to just respond against something. So we go from side to side, right? So I would say historically, generations in the past were much more performance driven, perfection driven, a lot about public image. I remember growing up, my mom always had a dress on if you were going to leave the house. So she never would have gone out in her workout clothes. I mean, different times now, but at the time, you were always dressed up to even go grocery shopping. And then the younger generations came around and they were like, we are so tired of having to always be perfect for everybody. We need transparency and vulnerability. And this idea of authenticity became a really big thing because they felt like people were two-faced. They had a public persona and a private persona, and they were not the same. It's kind of the Wizard of Oz effect, right? Where don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain because I've got the public image. So that was very much kind of a defining characteristic of older generations, at least our perception of them, I would say. And then the younger generations are on a total opposite. They responded against that and said, screw that. We're just going to be all that we are. We're going to be ourselves and we're not going to hide anything. And we're still kind of in that narrative. I would propose that both of them have something valuable to bring to the conversation and that there's actually a happy medium. But maybe we've gone too far to the other extreme. So that is where I think the Turning Red really fits into this kind of other extreme. So let me say that one super sweet moment in the movie that I thought was really valuable is the dad. There's this ceremony she can do to put her panda away forever and to kind of control the panda. And so she can just be a normal girl and not have this come up. And he saw a video that she had done with her friends where she's the panda and she's being all goofy and silly and fun with her friends and as her panda self. And he realizes that was a side of his daughter he had not known before. And he likes that side of his daughter. And he just encourages her in the sweetest way that he's like, hey, I saw that panda and I love it. And it wouldn't be bad if she didn't go away. And so I think for me, to see that, I think the important message there is that, like, for a dad to say, I see all of you, not just part of you. I think it's very easy to feel like people only like the parts of us that are convenient, or that we tend to like something that's like us, that we identify with. But for somebody to come in and say, I like all of you, even the less acceptable parts and the parts that seem like they're too much or they're not enough or whatever, but just all of it. And I don't want less of you. I want all of you. And I see that in you. I see all these pieces. And to affirm that in her and say that he didn't want any of that to go away was super sweet. And I would say a deep cry of the heart that most kids have is to know that all of who they are is really seen and accepted. So that was beautiful. But some of the things that I think, again, the message maybe fell short. It wasn't terrible. It just was incomplete. I would say at the beginning, I feel like they express, they kind of lump in to the same category, expressing your emotions and expressing your personality. And I would question if that's really the same thing. I believe we're supposed to show up in the fullness of who God made us to be, but that doesn't mean we have to express all of our emotions all the time, or even all of our personality maybe isn't always right to be shown all the time, right? There's certain times and places for things. So when you're in school, you're sitting in class, you're supposed to act a certain way. However, when you're out at the playground, you can be a different side of who you are. Both are acceptable. There's just an appropriateness to certain kinds of things. And so learning that level of appropriateness is important. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But so the first question I had was, is expressing your emotions the same as expressing your personality? And in this movie, they don't really make a distinction. And I'm probably not going to do a good job of separating those two for the rest of this discussion, but I think those are not necessarily the same. Let's see, and frankly, sometimes our hormones affect our personality. Our sleep affects our emotions can be affected by hormones, sleep, diet, circumstances around you, all those kinds of things. Your personality is a core of who tenet of your being. So they're not the same. And we need to be a little careful that when we're telling people to express themselves, what are we actually wanting them to express? Their emotions, their personality, and to maybe start discovering that there's some nuance there. There's some distinction that's worth making in that. So the second question I would have is all expression actually good? Do you want your parents to express every emotion all the time? If they're angry at you, do you want them to just give full vent to that? Probably not. You probably like them to have some self-control, right? If you're really sad and heartbroken over something and somebody just shows up and they're having a good day and they're just laughing and joking, like that feels really insensitive. So sometimes you don't want everybody's emotions to be expressed all the time without any sort of sensitivity to the circumstances or what's around them or whatever. So again, to just say express yourself is maybe not a complete message. Maybe that's the right way to say it. It's not wrong. It's just not complete. Express yourself, but with wisdom and with self-discipline and control and at certain times and in certain ways. But to just say, do it however, whenever is lacking nuance to the discussion. Another question I have is, are emotions always right and true? I would posit that they are not. I think my emotions are often lying to me. I feel certain ways because I'm tired or whatever. I mean, how many times do you go to bed and wake up the next morning, you're feeling better? I would say even Elijah, after he had that big showdown with the prophets, was feeling super depressed and was like, I want to die. And the angel shows up and says, get some sleep and eat some food. Eat and sleep, you will feel better. And he does. So, again, emotions are sometimes just a product of our state of exhaustion. So if they're not always true, why should we always elevate them as if they are always worthy of being, again, just fully vented? So I would add to that a couple of verses here where the Lord says, be angry and yet do not sin. So there is a right way to be angry and a wrong way to be angry. So to just simply say express your anger is not the same as saying express it well. Which brings me to another point here in a second. Let's see. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. Let's see. So is every expression good for the public? And this is kind of, again, with that be angry but don't sin. Like, not everything, there's a way to do these things. Some things are private. Use your journal. What was it? Bridget Jones, she wrote all these things down in her journal and then afterwards changed her mind. And so her, what's his name, just throws the journal away and buys her a new one. Like, whatever, that was just your emotions. Like, you were just having a bad day. You were venting. Let's throw the journal away. We don't have to like dignify all of that. Like, sometimes we need to express it, but we don't have to express it on people. So there's a time to go to the Lord, go to our journal, go to a trusted friend maybe, but it doesn't always have to be public. It doesn't always have to be everybody that knows everything that we're thinking or feeling or whatever. So go to the Lord. I would say that's the beauty of the Psalms. That's what we see David doing, and the other psalmists. So Tommy Nelson, pastor that I love, used to say, I remember him saying, you have to learn to fight fair. He said, you can't hit below the belt. You can't, there's a way to fight fair, even in a marriage, right? He was particularly talking about marriage, like fight, but fight fair and fight well. And I would say the same thing about our emotions. We need to express them, but express them well. And there are certain rules and guidelines to what's okay and what's not. And those are the kinds of things that I don't see having necessarily being worked out in this movie. And things that I think it would do well to add to the discussion. Okay. See, I talked about that. Okay, so the other thing is, like, the Bible talks a lot about self-control. And I'm struggling with that because I feel like our general, in society, our general discussion about expressing yourself kind of makes it out that like self-control, and not where you don't just express everything you're feeling, feels like the enemy of expressing your personality. And it is not opposed. Self-control is not the death of your personality, and it is not an enemy of that. It is actually something that God wants to work with your personality and to help sharpen it and make it better, but it is not to squash it. But it can feel that way. And I think older generations really valued self-control, and we have completely thrown that out with the bathwater. And we feel like that is the enemy of authenticity. Self-control is not the enemy of authenticity. And I would say the Hulk movies, or TV show, at least originally, I feel like he really honored self-control. He used to go, don't make me angry. You're not going to like me if I'm angry. Like, he was begging people because he knew that expressing all of his emotions was not always good. And sometimes it really hurts people. And so he was trying to live in a place of peace and self-control, really in the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. He was trying to live in that place. Because when he got angry, he would hurt people, and he did not want to hurt people. I think that's a healthy recognition of the damage that our emotions can do. And in this movie, it's like, I don't know that they really do a great job of recognizing that there are times when her emotions could be hurtful to people. So it's just like, express them, and we're just going to hurt you if we squash you, rather than saying, let's, again, do this well. And again, expressing your emotions, I'm going to say, is not the same as expressing your personality. I think there's a distinction there. So in the Hulk, he was squashing his anger and his emotions of rage and things. He was working on self-control. He was not trying to squash his personality and hide that. So I think he does a little more maybe focus. I would say the focus is more specific in that show about what it is that he's truly trying to keep under control. And in this one, the focus is definitely more on letting her personality out, even though it may not seem perfect to the family and fit their narrative of what their daughter should be. So that's a normal teenage kind of issue. And I think they do that pretty well. Let's see, I would say there's a general message, though, especially in our culture, that kind of indicates that if we are holding it in, it's a bad thing. And letting it out is always good. Like, it's just a very blank. If you hold it in, it's bad. If you let it out, it's good. And I think that is way too simple for the discussion. That is not that way oversimplifies the issues at hand. And there's no wisdom about how and when to apply those things. So I'm just cautious of any kind of message like that where it's just so blanket and simplistic. So here's one. I mentioned, we need to do this well. We express ourselves well. Here are just a couple of basic principles for that. One, there are, like I said, there are some guidelines, and these are just a few, but the Bible certainly has a bunch. But mirroring people, like honoring their emotions is important. So the Bible says, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. There's a principle there of being sensitive to other people's emotions as you express your own, and joining in their emotions as well. Self-control is not against your personality, but it will not ruin your personality, but it will help control your emotions so that you are not a damage to people around you, which is a good thing. We don't want to hurt the people around us. So I think, practicing the fruit of the Spirit is important. Distinguish between expressing your personality versus expressing your feelings. Your timing really matters. Be all of who you are, but learn how and when and where to express that. Like I said, classroom setting versus recess are two different places, and you get to express different pieces of yourself in those places. So you can be all of yourself, but maybe just not all at the same time, right? Recognize that your emotions affect other people. Like I said, the Hulk was aware of this. We are responsible to the community around us. And we're responsible for two different things. One is to be the fullness of who we are. God made us to shine his glory in a very unique way. And so we need to show up and be that thing. That's an amazing thing. We don't want to be less than who God made us to be. That would be a disservice to the Lord and to the people around us. So be all of who God made you to be. Yes, express that. However, you don't want to necessarily express all of your emotions because, like I said, sometimes they're not true. Sometimes they're lying. Sometimes they're hormones. Sometimes you're just tired. And when you express all those emotions, sometimes you do a lot of damage that it's hard to undo. So learning what to express, when to express, but seeing it as a sake of responsibility to the community and an act of love to people around you, that you can actually learn to die to yourself just a little bit so that you lay down your right to tell someone how ticked off you are, because you're going to give yourself some time to forgive or to settle down or whatever, or to sleep on it and see if you feel the same way the next day, whatever. Like, we don't have to explode on other people in the name of letting it all out and expressing ourselves in the name of our freedom. We don't want our freedoms to hurt someone else. So walk in self-control. Also, that involves healing. Because sometimes our emotions are a response to things in us that are broken and hurting. We have an open wound in our emotions, and it is raw. And so we are attacking other people, and we're like, we're just being who I am. Well, actually, you're not being a healthy version of who you are. You're expressing the pain that you are feeling over something. So we have an obligation to get healthy so that if we are healed, we don't have to walk in as much self-control, because honestly, if I'm a healthy person, I'm not nearly as sensitive to stuff. I don't get offended as easily. I'm not jealous and envious. I'm not all those things because I'm actually healthy and I'm loving and I'm kind and I'm filled up with the fruit of the Spirit. And so self-control should come a lot easier to us as we get healthy. And then we get to express ourselves fully, but we're expressing a healthy person and not an unhealthy, broken person. So that's a much better thing to express for everybody around us. So we have a responsibility to get healthy in this process. And then all of this gets easier as we do. And let me just remind you that the Bible here, when it talks about the fruit of the Spirit, talks about how we're called to freedom, but we don't use it as an opportunity. This is Galatians 5, starting in verse 13. Don't use it as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what's against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For those are opposed to each other to keep you from doing things you want to do. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Here we go. The works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned those before you, that the ones who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. Let me just remind you, I think if you look at that list, I see a lot of things, not necessarily in this movie. I'm not talking about this movie, but just in our culture. I see so many things in this list that would fit the kinds of things that people say, I'm just expressing myself, and, like, I should be able to be all the night, like this desire to be all those things and to express that kind of stuff, anger, bitterness, jealousy, rage, all these things. And God's saying, don't give vent to that, because that's the flesh, that's your sinful stuff, that's not your personality. Those are like sinful desires of the flesh and emotions. But he says the fruit of the Spirit, these we don't have to hold back on at all, right? It's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. And those who belong to Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. So let us not become conceited, provoking one another and envying one another, he says. As we walk in the Spirit, we don't have to hold back anything. We get to express fully all that we are. But until we are walking in the Spirit, we really need to practice some self-control and have some wisdom on what we express and what we don't express. So, like I said, I thought this movie was clever. I thought it had I was really excited when I saw the previews. At the end of the day, I was maybe a little disappointed that the conversation, I think, felt a bit simplistic. But what I do love is this is an amazing opportunity for you to have some conversations with your kids about some really cool, deep stuff that our society is completely, constantly giving a particular narrative to. And this gives you a really great opportunity to enter into the narrative and redeem it and help your kids really think critically about some things. So I would just say take advantage of the opportunity, but don't just stop with the movie, because it's going to define some things that I think it's going to become the definition of the cop. In the bottom lines, it's going to say, like, just be yourself, rather than how do we do that well? So let's help each other do that well. Raise up your kids in the way they should go. Like, help them think about the fact that self-control is not an enemy of authenticity. And what does that look like? So, all right. This is longer than I meant to be, but hopefully it gives you a lot of good tools. And I would love to hear if you're getting to have some of these conversations with your children, with friends, with whomever. I would love to hear it, because I'm not gonna lie, this one totally, I wrestled with some of these things, because I was actually in a particular situation where I was angry about some things, and I'm going, what does it look like to be honest about my emotions, but not just decimate somebody with them? And because there were some wrongs done, like, do I speak up and say that? How do I speak with truth and love, but also with the self-control of the Holy Spirit? And so what does it look like to be authentic, but also honoring to the Lord in that place? So I've actually been wrestling with this right in the middle of seeing that in that movie. So I've really been pondering this quite a bit. So I'm hoping this will be good for you, for your family, for your children, but, like I said, for you as well. So have a good day.